Hey folks, welcome back to Indaba Africa. This is Chris once again. Well, what's the latest? Well, the 68-year-old Minister of Police for South Africa, Bheki Cele, has stepped in the cock once again. He's put his foot right in the merde, stepped right into some dung. How's he done it? Well, he's opened his mouth again. Once again, Bheki Cele has opened his mouth. The gangster-in-chief of South Africa, the Minister of Police for South Africa, has done it again. Well, there's a whole big controversy that started with a speech that he gave on the 30th of December. This is after President Cyril Ramaphosa announced outrageous lockdown restrictions, which undoubtedly are unconstitutional in requiring compulsory mask wearing and things like that, which shocked many South Africans, but shouldn't come as a shock since they live in a police state. But on the 30th of December, he said the following when he was at Princess Mogogo Stadium. That's, of course, in KwaMashu. It's a township just northwest of Durban in KwaZulu-Natal province. While at Princess Mogogo Stadium, he said that there is no December 31st. There won't be any hitting of tins here. By 9 o'clock, everyone should be in bed. So it's important to note that for that to happen, we need to monitor that. Now, to be fair to Bheki Cele, he said should be in bed by 9 p.m. This controversy has spun a bit out of control, and I'm not in the habit of defending Bheki Cele. He's clearly not a personality worth defending. But let's be honest, there's a lot of hubbub and brouhaha about nothing here. He said should be in bed by 9 o'clock. That's not the disturbing part. What follows is the disturbing part. He added there would be consequences for individuals who break curfew or are drunk. Well, there's no prohibition on being drunk. There's a prohibition on the sale and transport of alcohol. If you have alcohol, there's no prohibition on drinking it. So what's this problem with being drunk? But here's the real concern. Make sure you lock them in. Usually you help them and show them home. This time we will give them a home. Our stations may be full, but we will make room for them, says Bheki Cele. Now, why would you make room and overcrowd your prisons, your jails, when the whole purpose of this horse manure is to stop the spread of COVID-19? Clearly, Bheki Cele is delusional or simply drunk with power. I'm going to argue he's drunk with power. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about this. Yeah. Anyway, so he made these comments, as I said, on the 30th of December, and he was quickly rebuked by the economic freedom fighters, among others, who lashed out at him. Well, let me read to you the economic freedom fighters' publicly issued statement, which, of course, too lazy to publish on their website, but they do publish these things on Twitter. So this is from Twitter, 31 December, New Year's Eve, Sylvester Robin. Well, thank you for that, EFF. The EFF notes with the inappropriate and attention-seeking utterances made by Minister Bheki Cele. After President Ramaphosa announced that we must celebrate the New Year in our homes and that at 12 midnight he will be lighting a candle for the departed due to COVID-19, Bheki Cele comes contradicting the president with his unfounded and stupid regulations that South Africans ought to be in bed by 9 o'clock. Ought to be in bed. It's not a regulation. It was simply a statement or recommendation. We are all expected to be home by 9 p.m., and so the police must not harass South Africans because of the misguided imbecile of a minister who clearly suffers from verbal diarrhea. Wow. Imagine a white South African making those statements about Bheki Cele. Screams of racism would be rampant from the economic freedom fighters, but they're free to criticize him. Well, frankly, they are free to criticize him. He's a public figure, and his actions are ludicrous. But let a white South African or colored or Indian South African make such utterances and see what happens to them. This clown called Bheki Cele is an anti-black minister who is only good at using violent language when he talks to blacks and very romantic when he talks to whites. Really? Really? Would this be the same Bheki Cele who hubs and pals around with Julius Malema himself? Remember the 16th of October in the Northern Free State at Senekal, in the courtroom in which Julius Malema had no standing. He got a 26 police car escort, courtesy of the South African Police Services, of which Bheki Cele is the minister of, 26-car police car escort. His followers were allowed to congregate and violate social distancing and mask requirements in South Africa, destroying the town itself, tearing down signs with no charges, no arrests, nothing, no consequence whatsoever. His followers called for domestic terrorism and arson against white-owned farms in South Africa, and the police did nothing against him. So how exactly is he romantic to whites and violent when using language to talk to blacks? This is horse manure. This is typical bullshit from the EFF, which is absolutely just nonsense. Anyway, moreover, when it comes to fighting corruption, cash and transit robberies, and gender-based violence, he is nowhere to be found. Well, I would agree with the EFF on that. For, once again, on a rare instance, the EFF and I agree. The Minister of Police is not present and does virtually nothing about that. But the EFF, of course, is silent on two also very important situations about violent crime in South Africa, specifically farm murders, or plasmod, the murder of farmers, their families, the violent terrorist methods used to torture and murder commercial farmers to scare commercial farmers off the land. And it's not just white commercial farmers. It's also black commercial farmers, coloreds, and even Indians. 26-year-old, 4-month pregnant woman, her throat slit to frighten Indian farmers off of the farms in KwaZulu-Natal. A 38-year-old black cattle farmer in the Free State shot in the head during a robbery to frighten commercial farmers off the land. And of course, we know what happened to Brendan Horner and the countless other victims that have been victims of this violence. So it's interesting, of course, the EFF doesn't give a flying flip about commercial farms because they want to steal the land and ostensibly hand it out to someone. Of course, it won't be productive after that. But cash in transit robberies, fighting corruption, gender-based violence, Bheki Cele is nowhere to be found. He's also nowhere to be found on farm murders. But more importantly, Bheki Cele is absent and nowhere to be found when it comes to the economic freedom fighters' exhortations to domestic violence. You know what I'm talking about. Specifically, what about Julius Malema calling for his followers to attack clicks locations around the country, and one of which was petrol bombed, and 44 of which were destroyed, attacked, looted, customers intimidated, antagonized. Wow, nothing happened there. Calls for violent murder of commercial farmers, white commercial farmers, no arrest for that. The assault of a South African police service officer, senior officer who was white, repeated assault in broad daylight in public, video filmed. Julius Malema lied that he never attacked the person, and of course he did. And he's finally been brought to trial on that, but nothing's happened, and nothing will happen on it. So I really don't see how Bheki Cele is romantic towards whites. That's just another lie. Not to mention the fact that it was Bheki Cele himself in the early stages of the lockdown a few months back, after the South African police service had withdrawn from the townships following the Sandef beating, assault, and murder of Collins Kosa and a dozen other or so black South Africans in the townships. The police and the military pulled out of the townships and let people in the townships do what the hell they wanted, thereby spreading COVID-19 across South Africa. They did nothing to stop it. Meantime, they used all the officers and police that were no longer doing that to harass and intimidate, mostly in the Western Cape, coloreds and whites. And it was the same Bheki Cele who chortled and smiled and was very happy when he announced that 230,000 South Africans had been arrested and their conduct criminalized, unconstitutionally, mind you, but criminalized. And he was happy that he had turned 230,000 law-abiding South Africans into criminals. Who do you think the vast majority of those 230,000 people arrested were? Residents of the Western Cape who were either colored or white. So how exactly is he romanticizing whites? Once again, the EFF is just so full of it that it just comes out of their ears. So imagine this. As such, as from today, no black person should listen to him until he deals decisively with the above mentioned. Wow. Could you imagine a member of the Democratic Alliance or the Freedom Front Plus or any other party, or certainly any white South African or colored South African making such a declaration? Don't listen to the police minister. Ignore what he says. Ignore what he declares. They would instantly be labeled as racist by the economic freedom fighters and many in the ANC. Cloud cuckoo land. This takes what happened in Zimbabwe to a level it's just unbelievable. It's well beyond that. And then, of course, in this statement, the EFF says, we are not a police state, and Bheki Cele must not behave like he is the absolute arbiter. He can tell his kids when to go to sleep at 9 p.m., but not us. Well, the sad thing is that, EFF, you do live in a police state, and you know you live in a police state, and you're quite comfortable with that, because Julius Malema flouts the police state rules, as do other members of the Economic Freedom Fighters, with no consequences whatsoever. Julius Malema's videos he posted to his Instagram account of him hobnobbing and violating social distance, drinking with dozens of people at parties and concerts over the Christmas holidays that he posted himself, which now many of his sycophantic supporters are claiming, well, these are old videos. Well, if they're old videos, then why did Julius Malema be so condescending to one of his followers and tell him that he would get an apology in heaven? And why did the EFF come out and defend, saying that, well, these were family gatherings in which only close family members? Well, if you have 85 close family members, that's not close anymore. Yeah, so once again, the EFF is delusional. So the EFF remains sympathetic to all affected, and families of those who lost their lives since the EFF contributed $15 million to the Solidarity Fund in fighting this killer disease. But today we are rebooting to face it with a new vigor and determination. Even in the face of death, we should always appreciate life. It's interesting that the EFF did virtually nothing the entire lockdown. Nothing. They didn't produce food baskets. They didn't visit their supporters in townships. They didn't visit the constituents they're responsible for. They were silent, except for a few ludicrous videos on Facebook and things like that by senior members of the party, being amateur musicians and such. Did virtually nothing. No food drives, nothing. No clothing drives, no efforts to get the government to reverse its policy, no lawsuits against the government when it was unconstitutional. They simply sat by idly and let other people take the fight to protect South Africans, but not the EFF. The EFF remains sympathetic to all infected, affected, and families. Really? Somehow I doubt the sincerity of that. I don't think they remain the least bit concerned about those who passed away who are not black South Africans. Just my thoughts on the matter. Perhaps they do, but I've never seen them once come out and say anything in favor of anyone in South Africa who's not black. So, in response to the EFF calling him a clown, this clown called Bheki Cele, and talking about how he's a misguided imbecile of a minister. Wow, that's some inflammatory language. In response to that, Bheki Cele had the following to say. He said, I've got work to do. If they want to debate, go to the high school matriculants and debate there. Ouch. Wow. It's on like junior rodeo here between Bheki Cele and the EFF, which is comical given how cozy Julius Malema and Bheki Cele were on the 16th of October, just 2 months ago. Not even 3 months ago at Senecal. Wow. A few people phone me, members of the EFF, to say they are embarrassed with such a statement. Well, perhaps they are. It's pretty pathetic, folks. Pretty pathetic. Meantime, that's not the end of the story. So Bheki Cele makes a statement about people should be in bed by 9 p.m. on New Year's Eve. The EFF loses its mind, of course, because the EFF is violating social curfews. They're violating the curfew. They're violating the social distancing. They're violating the mask requirements. And they're doing what the hell they want because the rule of law doesn't apply to the economic freedom fighters. We see that on a repeated basis. So they don't care. So this is just all window dressing to go after Bheki Cele. Why? Attention seeking on the part of the EFF. It was Bheki Cele who did virtually nothing to arrest the people who violated all of the requirements for the Brackenfell protest on the 20th of November. The EFF was limited to 100 people who were supposed to maintain social distance and peacefully protest. But somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 EFF supporters and members turned up, violating social distancing, marching in militaristic impi-like formations, carrying knob carries and pungas and golf clubs, threatening, intimidating the police and civilians nearby. None of them were arrested for their unlawful assembly, for their unlawful conduct, or from violating the court order that gave them authority and permission to have a gathering of 100 or less people. No consequences to that. But the EFF took it personally that they weren't allowed to come up and toy in front of a school and intimidate children because of their fraudulent racist narrative about Brackenfell. So apparently that's where this is coming from. But Bheki Cele has responded. So he says, I've got some work to do. Indeed, you do, you 68-year-old clueless person. But it's not where the story ends, folks. It's not where the story ends because someone has taken online to create a petition to have Bheki Cele removed. Change.org, of course, is where people love to go with their useless, petitions, which have no bearing on life. But this is a petition. However, petition to remove Bheki Cele gains traction. The Minister of Police constantly abuses his power, and when it comes to every activity that black people engage in, he has no regard for the rule of law while he's in charge of the whole law enforcement entity. Bheki Cele misinterprets lockdown regulation with no regard to consequences. That's from the creator of the petition. Well, why do you say black people? He has no regard for the rule of law for anyone. Why the bigotry and the self-victimization here? It's all South Africans who are the victims of his clueless rule as the Minister of Police, not black South Africans. If anything, black South Africans are coddled by the Minister of Police. The only legitimate argument here that's a concern is that 60 South Africans are murdered every day and tens of thousands of South Africans are robbed every day. Many, if not most, of them are black. That's a legitimate concern. But that's not talked about here. Murders aren't talked about here. Just specific crimes, most of which are actually crimes that affect, well, with the exception of gender-based violence, are crimes that affect white or colored South Africans. Yeah, this people have no concept of the people making these claims. Anyway, Yeah, so there you go, folks. So now there's a petition to have him removed. Anyway, so it hasn't quite ended. But for the part of the South African Police Service, it's 190,000, approximately 194,000 members, of which 150,000 are actually police officers. The other 42,000 are civilians to support the force. But of that, Bheki Cele announced when he was at this, when he spoke on the 3rd of December, that the SAPs have had 21,000 members test positive for COVID-19. That's about 11% of the force. That's pretty high. That's pretty high. And if that was mostly police officers, even higher. So, but that's not a surprise, given that police officers, as do emergency responders, come in close contact with large numbers of the civilian population, even during a lockdown. So it's not surprising that a larger percentage of law enforcement would become affected by this than the population at large. But 11% is pretty high. 21,000. But here's the thing, folks. Of the 21,000 police officers, the 194,000 member South African Police Service, SAPS, 336 members have passed away, their deaths attributed to COVID-19. Folks, that is 0.002%. Excuse me, 0.016%. 0.016% of the force has died. So 0.16, 0.16. So that's little over 0.1%. It's a very low figure, lower than we're seeing in much of the world. So either SAPS police officers get good health care, or they're in better condition, or something is keeping their fatality rate lower. Not sure what it is, but that's good news that their fatality rate is lower. The norm is about 0.2%. This is less than that by about 25%. The total is about 0.2% for those being infected. So it's not good news for SAPS, but better news than many people are dealing with given the circumstances. But whatever, Bheki Cele once again has stepped in it. He stepped right into it. You think at 68 years of age, someone would be more adept and would figure things out better. But no, South Africa's Minister of Police, Bheki Cele, has stepped in the cock again. But the EFF's utterances are just off the mark. And once again, they're bigoted. They are one-sided, and they're focused only on one group in South Africa, because the EFF is once again displaying that it doesn't care about South Africans. It cares about black supremacy. That's what it cares about. This is not a party interested in the concept of a rainbow nation, equality, or freedom for South Africans. It's a party that uses this nationalist language in a dangerous fashion to attack others who look different, who are different. And that is a dangerous road to go down. We've seen that happen many different places, including South Africa in the past. Anyway, folks, Bheki Cele. If you're not a subscriber to Chris Wyatt Africa, I ask you to take a moment and become a subscriber. And feel free to leave a comment on the video if you like. Abusive comments will be deleted, and you might be exposed or reported for your behavior. And finally, I ask that you smash the like button, because likes help drive viewership, and that's important to get the message out. So this brouhaha, in my view, is really about nothing. Now, this dispute with Bheki Cele is legitimate. He is a feckless, useless Minister of Police who cares little about the rule of law and cares much more about his appearance and his gangster-like attitude in harassing people and in criminalizing the conduct of South Africans who are law-abiding, while allowing criminals and gangster syndicates to run rampant across South Africa with virtually no action taken. So that's the reality in South Africa, not the one that the EFF paints. Anyway, folks, thanks a lot. Thank you for your patronage, and have a good day.